Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. We are going to be talking about the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska and if it's actually going to really happen. So I'm going to go to first Larry Johnson's comments on this.
Let's talk about the benchmark for what should be happening in any administration. There should be one message. You should be able that the control of the messaging from the White House on down to make sure that the State Department's singing from the same sheet of music, the DOD's singing from the same sheet of music. You know, that's what you expect. What we have with Donald Trump is a multiple personality disorder, where out of his mouth are coming complete opposite things, or out of his administration. So first we heard, oh, it was a great meeting. Then the very same day, Trump, oh, I'm really disappointed in Putin. Now, which was it? Was it a great meeting, or are you really disappointed? That the Russians waited foolishly, I think. They had agreed with Witkoff, okay, we won't tell what happened in our conversation until you have a chance to brief Trump. And then the Trump team got out there and said, yeah, you know, those Russians begged for the meeting with us. No, they didn't. It was just the opposite. It was the United States that begged for the meeting. That's why Witkoff went to Moscow. It wasn't Moscow going to Washington. And that's number one. Then finally, after, you know, the U.S. is talking this up, talking about the results of the meeting from their spin, the Russians come out and say, no, it was, you know, the U.S. came and said, hey, they'd want to have a meeting with about bilateral session with Trump and Putin. So we agreed to that. And then the word leaked out that it was going to be United Arab Emirates. And then the United States comes out and says, oh, no, we haven't agreed to that. And then the U.S. put out the demand as well that, you're going to have to, Putin's going to have to meet with Zelensky as well. And the Russians are saying, yeah, that's a non-starter. And then Trump says, well, not necessarily, you know, so it's all over it's a mess. And I don't think the meeting will come off. You know, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but even if it comes off, it's not going to bring about a ceasefire unless the conditions that Vladimir Putin has repeatedly laid out, along with Sergei Lavrov and Sergei Rybkov, the number 2 man in the foreign ministry, and Peskov, the spokesman for Putin, and Maria Zakharova, the press spokeswoman for the foreign ministry. It's been repeated over and over and over what the conditions are. And Ukraine's not going to accept those. And if those aren't accepted, Russia's not going to accept a ceasefire. And yet the Trump administration keeps spreading the lie that, oh, yeah, it looks like we've got to deal with Russia for a ceasefire. The only conditions under which there would be a ceasefire is if Ukrainian troops withdraw immediately from the 4 oblasts, former oblasts of Ukraine that are now republics of Russia, and an end to any NATO ambitions and pulling NATO out of Ukraine, and an end to Western military support, and elections in Ukraine, a commitment for new elections. And then at that point, Russia would be willing to entertain a ceasefire. But until that happens, there's not going to be a ceasefire. This war will continue. The problem, I think, I worry that the Russians are being too naive. In my piece at sonar21.com last night, I likened Putin to Charlie Brown, an intelligent Charlie Brown. But nonetheless, in the cartoon written by George Schultz, there was always this meme of Charlie Brown wanting to kick the football, Lucy holding the football. And every time Charlie Brown would run up to kick it, she'd pull it away, he would kick empty air and fall on his ass. Well, how many times do you have to be lied to by the United States to understand Trump's not telling the truth? They're not at all interested in seeking a peaceful agreement in Ukraine that leaves Russia intact. Because just today, here's Trump hosting Armenia and Azerbaijan to sign a peace agreement and work out some bilateral agreements with them. It has nothing to do with peace. This is all about putting pressure on Russia in the Southern Caucasus, as well as pressure on Iran. This is not a good diplomatic move where the United States is trying to be the adult in the room. This is part of a broader strategy to destroy Russia. And until the Russian people understand that, they're going to keep being Charlie Brown.
Well, he said that very well, of course, very well. And yeah. Colonel Wilkerson also agrees with Larry Johnson that this meeting will not happen. So let me add some information to that. Zelensky trashes Trump's peace terms. The Ukrainian leader said Kiev will not accept any agreement with Moscow that includes territorial concessions. Vladimir Zelensky, I thought he was Vladimir, it goes back and forth, has rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's call to territorial concessions to Russia, claiming no such agreement would be accepted by the Ukrainian people. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff visited Moscow this week and reportedly made significant progress toward a compromise aimed at ending the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The U.S. president said the proposal includes some swapping of territories to the betterment of both sides, and that Zelensky would need to find a way to approve such a deal under Ukrainian law. In his regular video address on Saturday, Zelensky stressed that Ukraine's borders are defined by its constitution and that nobody can or will make concessions on the issue. The Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupiers, he proclaimed. Zelensky added that Ukrainians will only respect a real, living peace, warning that any decision taken against us, without Ukraine, would be a decision against peace. So, let me just say, if that's how he feels, that, and you can understand why he would want to be involved. He is the other side of this war. However, no concessions to land. I don't think he has much leverage in this at all, on making such a statement. He is on the losing side, and there really isn't much that he can do in this, in my opinion. So, yeah, I don't see how this meeting is going to work. I can see why Larry Johnson and Colonel Wilkerson think this because of these kind of things, but also this last article I'll share on this issue. European backers make counter-offer ahead of Alaska talks. Now remember, all the neocons, all the neoliberals, all those people who are pro-war, who want to destroy Russia and continue supposedly grinding it down, supposedly to weaken it, are not for this meeting between Putin and Trump. Okay, now, the way I'm understanding it, Trump's reasons is because he wants a peace. He wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. It's all about him and doing these things and making this stuff happen. However, reality says it's a lot tougher than just, okay, everybody's going to work this out. And pretty sure, well, anyway, let's go on. Kiev and several European states have reportedly told U.S. officials that only a reciprocal territory swap with Moscow is possible. A number of European nations have joined Ukraine to present their own counter-proposal for a resolution of the conflict with Russia, citing anonymous European officials. The plan was hastily drawn up after U.S. President Trump confirmed that he would be meeting with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska next Friday. The journal said on Saturday that representatives of Ukraine, the UK, France, and Germany had scrambled to respond to a proposal reportedly floated following a meeting between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Wednesday. According to media reports, Ukraine would be required to cede all of the Donetsk People's Republic to Russia as part of a peace agreement. Moscow considers the DPR, as well as the Lugansk People's Republic, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions, to be part of its territory following referendums held in 2022. Yes, they voted to be part of Russia. However, Russia presently controls only the LPR in its entirety. During a meeting on Saturday in the UK, chief aides to European leaders presented the joint plan to U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, with Trump's Ukraine envoy Keith Kellogg and Witkoff joining via video link. Kiev's European backers insisted that a ceasefire must take place before any other steps are taken. Now you know that Russia is not going to go for that. They have said that several times. As it says there, Moscow has consistently stressed that any peace process should proceed the other way around. The publication said that the counter-proposal advocated a strictly reciprocal exchange of territory, and on condition that ironclad security guarantees be provided to Ukraine, including potential NATO membership. That is a red line, and has been a red line for Moscow for decades. So what they're putting out there is they know this isn't going to happen. I mean, they know what they're wanting to put forward. What they are saying here is not going to be accepted by Moscow. So it's another way to sabotage, so to speak, kill any peace deals. That's the problem there. Now, there are no prophecies that I have seen that say that there was a peace agreement made between U.S. and Russia on this Ukraine-Russia deal. There's nothing about U.S. doing any type of deal with Russia. However, there is this NATO peacekeeping group, which is basically, it's the NATO group that supposedly goes into Ukraine to stand on the borders of Russia and Ukraine. I saw one prophecy on that I think it was an unknown elder, but I haven't heard anything else from any of the other elders or saints on this. So I really think that the way things are going and what we have seen through the prophecies of Ukraine and Russia is that it's going to come out on the battlefield, and that Russia is going to have to finish it on the battlefield and to march into Kiev themselves. And basically arrest the government, Zelensky and all. I don't know those details, but it's not going to end with a supposed peace agreement between U.S. and Russia, as far as I've seen. Now, as I've said in the past, prophecies can change. The littler details can change in a prophecy with enough repentance and all that. I don't know if we actually have had that. Do you really feel like that's happened? Do you really feel like our country is repenting, especially the people running it? I don't think so. So, and then the Azerbaijan deal, I'm going to get into that in another video, with this deal that Trump did with Armenia and Azerbaijan, and how that fits in with those countries and the prophecies, the World War III prophecies. I will get that in another video. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is actually going to make a difference? And do you actually, first off, do you think they actually are going to really meet? What do you think is going to happen? Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for following my channel. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support. I hope you're having a great day. Until next time.